Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of the Yakking Show. And hang around to the end of this episode. We're going to give you a teaser on who's coming up on the next episode next week. And most importantly, our guest will give you his tip. And as you know, we always have good tips from our guests at the end of the show. But first, let's introduce co-host Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
Oh, Peter, I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you also very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate having you. And as Peter mentioned, we have another special guest with us today. Welcome, Kevin Palmieri. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm living the dream. I appreciate you both having me. I'm excited to chat. It's always interesting when there is a host and co-host or dual
Mhm.
co-host situation because that is what I come from. So I'm always excited to chat with two people.
I got
Fan
to jump in quick there, Calmer. You're a man who likes a little bit of humor, and I bet you haven't been on many hosts where the alternate tagline is "Beauty and the Beast," and you know which is which on this show, right?
No, I love that. What we're joking, Alan and I have been joking about the genius and the comedian, and I'll let you
Okay.
figure, hopefully we'll figure out by the end which one of those I am.
Oh, we have no mistake on which is which on our side. Anyway, sorry, Kathleen, I had to jump in with that because we've got a guest who appreciates humor. So back to you.
Right. Well, let's give our audience a little bit of background on Kevin. Kevin is the co-host of Next Level University, which is a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 1,800 episodes. Congratulations on that, by the
Thank you
way.
so much. I appreciate it.
And 1 million listens in over 170 countries. Now, he is the co-host with Alan Lazarus, who we had on the show just a couple of weeks ago. So, again, welcome, Kevin. And today, Kevin is here to yak with us about holistic self-improvement. So let's just jump right in. Kevin, you've got a strong business background, but our main focus here is helping people holistically. So from your experience, what is the main issue or fear that holds people back from fulfilling their unique potential?
Ooh, my goodness. I would say the big one that I have seen, because I've worked with a lot of people who are not like Alan. They have
Hmm.
lower self belief and they have lower self worth.
Mhm.
I think it's the fear of failure. The
Mm,
fear of failure and the judgment that comes with it.
Hmm.
That is something that I was terrified of in the beginning. I'm probably going to come across as somebody who's really confident. That is not my natural tendency. I've just done this a lot. So for me, I would never try stuff because I was afraid that if I failed, it would mean something about me. I'm a failure. I'm not
mm.
smart enough. I'm not good enough. And honestly, those were the limiting beliefs that I've been battling through for the last however many years. So I think that's a really big piece of it. And then on the opposite end, I didn't know that some people were afraid of success.
Hmm.
I thought everybody wanted to succeed. I thought that's why we were doing this. But then when I started working with Alan, I realized that he's more afraid of success than he is failure. And every time he succeeded in the past, he was either villainized by people, he was pulled back, people didn't want to see him win, or people weren't nice to him. So he realized that the more I win, the more I lose people. I'm just going
Hmm.
to stay small. For me, it was the opposite. I'm just going to stay small because I don't know how to play big. And I think those are probably the two biggest things that we've seen in our experience and all the relationships with our audience that we've had.
Oh,
Interesting.
interesting that you
Interesting.
would say the
Yeah.
fear of success. Yeah, we can relate to the fear of failure for sure, but probably it's very subconscious on a subconscious level that
Yeah.
people would fear success because you think, oh no, everybody wants success. How could you fear that? But what you just said what makes sense actually is that you're afraid that people are going to think differently of you
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
having what, yeah, perfect.
Or they might villainize you because
Yeah.
so I said something to Alan one time that it was something that took him back. I said, Alan, you have to understand that most of the friends you're friends with today, you're not going to be friends with in 5 years. I know that because you're not supposed to be friends with them right now. You just don't realize how badly they're
Right.
treating you. He was playing small so he could have the certainty of those people around him. I
Mhm.
believe one of the most common misconceptions when it comes to human beings is we like people around us more than we like people around us that support us.
Hmm.
We would rather have misaligned people around us than be alone because being alone is scary as heck. At
Sure.
least if you have people around There's people there that are holding space. Maybe they're not pouring into your life the way you want them to, but they're still there. And I think there's something to that.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Oh,
very much
being
so. Very
grateful.
much so.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Kevin, what was the catalyst in your particular case? What started you on this journey of self-improvement?
Mostly pain, I would
Pain.
say, as it tends to be with a lot of people.
Hmm.
When I was 25, from all the external standpoints, I was extremely successful. I was in the best shape of my life because I was competing in a bodybuilding show. My girlfriend at the time was a model. I had a sports car, new apartment, great friends, high paying job. And my girlfriend ended up leaving me because I was so depressed and I was so anxious and I was just a shell of the human being that she met. You'd think that would be enough pain. It wasn't. So when she left, I convinced myself that, you know what? I can work on myself. I'll do that eventually. Right now, I need to make more money. Because if
Hmm.
I make more money, I'm sure some of these problems will just kind of dissolve. They'll probably go away on their own. So the next year, I just worked a ton and I worked for a company that did a lot of traveling. So I spent 10 months living on the road. Got to
Wow.
the end of the year, it was brutal. Got to the end of the year and I made $100,000 at 26 with no
Wow.
college degree.
Wow.
But I had the same realization of, oh, okay, yeah, no, that didn't change anything internally.
Mm.
Bank account is much better. Financially, I feel very secure. I'm still extremely insecure in who I am. Low self belief, low self worth, all of that stuff. Started a podcast shortly thereafter. Fell in love with podcasting, as I can tell you two are as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But as you know, also, in the beginning, there's not a line out the door of people saying, Peter, Kathleen, this is a great idea. How much money do you need so you can do this to the degree that you want? So I had to keep going to this job that I hated, and I was more depressed and I was more anxious, and I was homesick because I was living on the road for weeks at a time. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving job sites early. I start showing up late. And eventually it got to the point where I was sitting in a hotel room 6 hours from where I lived. I was getting ready for work one morning. My alarm clock went off. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is that morning it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one is saying you're stuck here forever. You got lucky to get this job. You're never going to get as lucky as you did here. If you ever did leave to pursue something else, what would your friends think? What would your family think? I made more money than any of my friends. I made more money than anybody in my family ever did. And the loudest one for me was, what are you going to do with your life? If you leave here, do you really think you're going to be a podcaster? And that's what we're going to do. And it was in that moment where I thought to myself, well, if I was just to take my life, I would take all my problems with me. And that was the catalyst for everything that has happened since.
Mm.
I reached out to Alan that day
Really?
and I said, hey, I'm struggling. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm dealing with. He talked me off the ledge, so to speak. I left my job 3 or 4 months later. Him and I partnered up, and I've been doing this full time with Alan since 2018. So it was quite literally achieving success, realizing success wasn't success, trying to figure out what fulfillment was, finding fulfillment in podcasting, and then saying, all right, cool, that's the thing I want to go all in on.
Mm. Wow, very good.
Wow.
Amazing.
I appreciate it.
Now, at the beginning, we said that you've had like 1,800 episodes, over 1,800 episodes of your podcast. So you've talked to a lot of people. And I was wondering, is there a common thread amongst your podcast listeners that you have observed?
So yeah, I mean, there's many common threads. One is about podcast guests. So in the very beginning,
Mhm.
I remember we would have somebody on the show and I would say, oh, wow, what an amazing story about overcoming adversity and turning that adversity into something truly inspiring. Probably never hear a story like that again. Next week, same thing. Somebody would join us and they would have the most incredible story about overcoming all of this adversity and all of these obstacles and having every single reason in the world to quit, but they never did. Well, maybe that was okay, 2 weeks in a row. And then it just kept happening. So that was one lesson that I learned pretty quickly is One, whatever you're going through right now, I do not want to minimize it, and I'm not certain what it is because I don't know who you are, but that could be a massive piece of your story in the future. Your purpose could be buried in the pain that you're going through right now.
Hmm.
And your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to use it. I don't know what that algorithm is yet on how to turn your adversity into your advantage. I'm not sure, but it's definitely a possibility, and that's something that we saw very, very often. And then the common pattern that we found in our community was low self worth leads to decisions that reinforce low self worth.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So we have the most heart driven, amazing humans who listen to the podcast. I would talk to them. They'd say, yeah, I'm in a relationship that isn't great. And I don't know why I always end up in relationships like this. And then we dig and we dig and we dig, and we'd realize that the way they were raised, they were talked down to, and it really hurt their self belief and their self worth. And what happened was they attracted people into their lives that they didn't filter out.
Yep.
I think self worth is a filter. It
Hmm.
filters out, oh, this isn't right for me. I deserve better. I deserve more. I deserve different. So we really saw that cycle of when you have low self worth and you don't filter out the negative, toxic people that shouldn't be in your life, it hurts your self worth even more. And then you're going to attract that. You're not going to filter it out, and it kind of becomes this self fulfilling prophecy. So one of those was for the guests, and then the other one was for, yeah, for the community.
Hmm. Interesting.
So is it a comp what causes such because it seems to be an epidemic of low self-worth out there. Wouldn't you say? Would you agree with that? And is it because of people's experiences? Yes, we all have experiences in our lives, no doubt. Or is it, our environment? Is it what we're listening to on a day-to-day basis? Is it what's causing such low self-worth? Any idea?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is it's the way we're raised.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad left us when we were young. I don't know. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27.
Mm.
In my mind, I internalized that as my fault. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I must have disappointed him. All of those are just removing bricks from the building of self worth.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't help. So I think the way you're raised it plays a huge role in that.
Sure.
And now I'm willing to bet that the correlation between social media and self worth is very, very, very connected.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
I'm in
Yep.
pretty good shape. Like, I'm in reasonably good shape. If you put me in a room with 100 strangers, I'd probably be in the top 5%. When you go on social media land, everybody is in world class shape. And even me, a bodybuilder who has been working out for a long time, I see these guys and I think to myself, there is no way I could ever look like that. Because I couldn't. So I say this often. I don't know, don't quote me on the years because I'm 35, so I wasn't around in the 50s. But I'm willing to bet in the 50s and the 60s, the only time you ever really saw the most beautiful people on the planet was on TV or on magazines.
Right.
Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
I can see the most successful, the most handsome, the most beautiful, the most in shape, the most in love, the most everything on this.
Hmm.
So the barrier to entry for comparison is just, it's non-existent. Everywhere
Right.
you look, you are literally looking at some of the most beautiful people on the planet. The most in shape people, the most wealthy people, whatever it is, the best communicators, the biggest podcasters, the biggest movie stars. So yeah, Kathleen, I think that's a big piece of it is
Mhm.
there used to be hoops you would have to jump through to see these people. Now, the way the algorithm is set up is I'm going to show whatever gets the most attention.
Mhm.
What
Yep.
gets the most attention? The biggest muscles, the biggest breasts, the most money, the biggest butts, whatever it is.
Right.
And I think that it just doesn't help when it comes to comparison.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I have the advantage of being brought up. I was born in 1950, so I started school in 55, 56, right? And my teenage years were in the 60s, years before the internet. So you're absolutely right. It was the odd magazine. You might see I can't remember the famous bodybuilders of that era, but maybe once or twice a year you would see a picture of a guy with huge muscles. That's it.
Right.
Or the odd movie you went to. So we weren't exposed to that.
Mhm.
But we were exposed to all sorts of other things, which I think gave our generation a pretty solid foundation. Wow.
Mm.
Switching focus a little bit, Kevin, on your website you talk about habits. So why are habits important for physical, mental, and emotional well-being? What can you tell us about habits?
Yeah, essentially, you become what you practice.
Hmm.
So whether we know it or not, we have habits.
Hmm.
I think some people say like I'm not good at building habits. No, maybe you're not good at building ideal habits. You already have
Yep.
habits. If you wake up in the
Right.
morning, you roll over and you check your phone, that's a habit.
Yep.
Right? If you hit snooze, that's a habit. If you stay up too late, that's a habit. So, yeah, the habits quite literally are the inputs that dictate whether or not you get the results that you desire out of life. And if you're not conscious of the habits that you're practicing, you're going to end up somewhere that you didn't design. So habits are everything. I know it's a sexy word right now, and I know a lot of people are focused on building great habits and breaking bad ones, but I always suggest to people that you start almost embarrassingly small.
Hmm.
Going back to what we talked about at the top, I believe most people struggle with self belief.
Hmm.
I think statistically, I would say the majority of people have struggles when it comes to self belief. So the advice of if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough, I don't agree with that. I think life is scary. The last thing you want is your goals to scare you. You want to run towards your goals, not away. Take massive action. I don't agree with that. I agree with taking whatever the necessary amount of action to build momentum based on where you are is.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when it comes to habits, I would try to make them as simple and seemingly insignificant as humanly possible. When I started tracking habits, and that's our entire business, that's what our whole business runs on now. I started tracking, I think, 5 habits. I would weigh myself every day. I try to exercise for 30 minutes. I track my finances. I'd post on social media, and I would do something called fear chasing, where I would go out of my way to do something that scared me. That became my life is okay, let me check off these 5 boxes and let's see what happens. That 5 habit checklist went to 10 and then it went to
Hmm.
15. And I think now it's 27 or something. But you never wonder what you're supposed to do. I
Hmm.
don't ever wake up and say, all right, what do I do today? I have a list of habits that we have dictated and determined are reverse engineered based on where I want to go. So yeah, habits are the thing that's going to help you end up at a designed life, not end up somewhere by accident. If you don't have habits, you don't really know where you're going to end up. If you do
Right.
have habits, you have a good idea of where you're going to end up eventually. It just takes longer than we hope usually.
Right,
Hmm.
right.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I find that if you start with a few good habits, as you've just said, now mine were I've always been active all my life, used to run marathons and all sorts of things. So my physical exercise habit now is I'm on the road at about 8 minutes past 6, even if it's dark, and I walk for 48 minutes. I walk 5 kilometers, 3.5, 3 point something miles, and I do that in about 47 minutes. And then I come home and I do 40 sit-ups and 40 push-ups, right? And then I do some writing with my non-dominant hand. I'm just talking about a few, but I found enforcing or building that habit of walking first made other habits easier, the more
Yep.
mental habits so much easier. I find if you can start with the physical, the exercise, it just lays a foundation for the other important habits that get you on in life, right? So
Same.
you're right. You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
Same for me.
Yeah.
I wake up, I go, and again, your morning routine doesn't have to be Peter's, it doesn't have to be mine, it doesn't have to be
No,
Kathleen's, whatever works for you. But
works
this
for you.
is yeah, right? But this is what works for me. I
Right.
wake up, go into the living room, I do 20 minutes of mobility while I listen to a book. I'm listening to Built to Last right now by Jim Collins.
Hmm.
And that's how I start my day
Hmm.
every day, 7 days a week. I love that. I look forward to that. I enjoy that. Do I enjoy getting up at 6? Not always. Some
No,
days I don't want to. But once I have momentum, everything else is a little bit easier. So
that's right.
I think it's about figuring out where is the most resistance. Is
Yep.
it the
Yep.
alarm clock? Is it the mobility? Is it going outside? Whatever it is, and then at least you can attack that to figure out what's the habit to counteract that.
That's
Mm.
right. So, no, well done. Very good.
Yeah, I
Back to you,
agree. I
Kathleen.
agree. We are definitely creatures of habit, and we love most, I think, humans enjoy a routine.
Hmm.
And once it
Yeah.
becomes part of your routine, like exercise, I have one as well. You just look forward to it. Okay, I need to do this at this hour. And yeah, absolutely agree with that. So, Kevin, Tony Robbins, speaking of action, Tony Robbins has often said that what sets the successful apart from the unsuccessful is the ability to take action. So, why is it so many people find it difficult to take action that will actually propel them forward?
Ooh, I would have so many answers depending on when you ask me throughout this journey. The one that pops to my mind right now is they don't actually believe it will be worth it.
Mm.
There's three beliefs as a human you must have in order to take a new action. One, it is humanly possible.
Mhm.
Two, it is personally possible. And three, and this is the big one that I think a lot of us miss, it will be worth it.
Mm.
I had to believe that showing up here with you two would be worth it. If I didn't
Hmm.
believe that, why would I do it? I wouldn't. It just doesn't make sense. It's not logical. I think that's a really big thing. Well, it doesn't matter anyway. If you've ever, I think this is a really good example. If you've ever been somewhere and you see somebody that you're attracted to and you don't have the confidence to go up to them and ask them their name or ask them out or ask them for their number, watch the justifications you use. I'm willing to bet one of the justifications will be, it doesn't matter anyway. Boom. You don't believe it will be worth it. That's all you're saying is, I honestly don't believe it'll be worth it. I think that's one of the biggest things. And does it go back to low self-belief? I think so to a degree. But the hard thing is, it's not about taking action once. It's about taking repeated action. So I
Yeah.
understand why taking action the first time is so hard, because honestly, nothing really happens.
Mhm.
It can unlock a lot internally. Oh, that's awesome. I did my first episode. I wrote my first page. I had my first coaching session, whatever it is. But after that, it's back to the drawing board and how do we do it again tomorrow? So I think that's a really big piece of it too. And I think the expectations are off. We live in a weird time now where everything comes to you with a snap of a finger. I'll order something on Amazon. I don't know how they get it to me the same day. It's weird, but that's the way it goes, right?
Mhm.
Internet connection is super fast. I can watch anything on my phone. It's wild. But when it comes to taking action, you don't get any benefits from the action in any reasonable amount of time. So I think that's a big piece of it too. I think one is we don't actually believe it will be worth it.
Right.
And then two, we know that we're not going to get anything from it right away.
Mhm.
And I think we want to wait for perfect.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'll do that when. I'll do that if. And I don't know if when or if is really ever going to come, unfortunately. And if it does, you're going to be behind where you could have been if you just started when you had the thought initially.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah. No, good point. Good point. So I'm going to show my age yet again. I'm a sort of older member of the boomer generation, and my observation is that many people, not all, I'm trying not to generalize, but I observe many people in younger generations uh, have a lack of commitment. And I don't know the answers to why that should be. I have a few ideas, but what's your thoughts on that? You're obviously one of the exceptions. Alan is an exception, but there are too many who, putting it in your words, don't take action for whatever reason.
I honestly, I think one of the reasons is it seems cool not to commit to something, because when you commit to something, ultimately what you're doing is you're making it a piece of you and you're making it a piece of your identity. And when
Okay.
things do get hard, it really is hard not to personalize it. So we've we've been saying this a lot on our podcast. Isn't it weird how one of the hardest things in the world is just to be yourself?
Hmm.
Just being yourself is one of the hardest things in the world. Why? Because if you guys don't like me and me, the real me, I can't write that off and say, well, that's not who I am anyway. You didn't see the real version of me. If I show you the authentic version of me and you don't like me, I'm going to internalize that. I think that's one of the reasons people don't get or stay committed, because when you're committed, you care. And
Hmm.
when you care, you can get devastated and hurt when things don't go your way. So I think that's a piece of it. I remember when I was young, I think I was in middle school, and somehow I was dating one of the most popular girls in school. And dating at that time meant nothing. We didn't talk, we just were dating. I don't know, we didn't hang out, we weren't old enough to go on dates. But one day I was walking back from gym class and my buddy said to me, "Hey, did you hear that girl broke up with you?" And I remember I said to him, I was like, "Oh, dude, I don't even care. It doesn't even matter." I was devastated. I was devastated. But I didn't want him to know I was devastated, so I pretended I didn't care. I pretended I wasn't committed to the idea, and I just brushed it off like it was nothing. So I really think that's a really big piece of it. When you're fully committed to something, you're all in, and you are giving it your heart, you're giving it your soul, you're giving it everything. And you don't have an easy out when crap hits the fan. You have to own it. And I think a relationship's a really good example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're committed, you're in it.
Right.
My wife comes home, she has a rough day. It doesn't matter what my day's been like. I'm going to be there. I'm committed. I can't just brush it off. So that's what pops to my mind when we talk about commitment.
Yeah, I draw a comparison to, again, going back to my younger days. We had a terrorist war in Rhodesia, so I served 10 years on and off in the military, right? All able-bodied men were conscripted, and we did 9 months training, and then we did tours of duty 6 weeks a few times a year, and towards the end of that 10 years, I spent more time in the bush than I did at home. And we were committed. We were fighting for our country. Something similar with Vietnam. Never mind whether Vietnam was right or wrong. Many Americans volunteered and went willingly to fight in Vietnam, right? And they made a commitment and they died for it, right? And I don't see anywhere near that level of commitment now. Maybe that's a good thing that people don't want to go to war. I'm not arguing that, but to use a different example of looking after old parents or whatever. It just seems to me that people were far more easily able to make that commitment several generations ago than they are now. And that was the background to my question to you. And I think it's a very complicated answer, but I think you've got a big part of it there. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Well, I think the other thing too is core values and core beliefs.
Absolutely.
If you aren't the type of person that wants to take care of your parents, maybe you have the courage to admit that and you don't seem committed when in reality you're committed to something else. You're committed to your alignment. So yeah, it's Peter, I think it's a very deep and complicated conversation, but I appreciate you bringing it up.
Interesting. Good stuff. Kathleen.
So, Kevin, on your website, you have an article about failing your way to success. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So when Alan and I first started working together, he's like, "Kev, if you want to get really good at something, all you have to do is go fail at it over and over and over again." And I said, "No, man, that does not sound fun. I want to be good at stuff. I want to succeed." But that kind of is the way, and I'm going to try to speak on it to get it to land because Alan never got it to land for me. But the way to succeed is it's a 4-step system. It's prep. So you prepare for the thing that you're about to do. Before I came on here, I looked you guys up. I looked at the YouTube, bada bing, bada boom, cool, awesome, right? Prep, rep, show up and do the darn thing. Here I am. I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm going to do my best. Awesome. After this, I will reflect. How did it go? Do I feel like it went well? Do I feel like they liked me? How was I? Cognitively, did it all make sense? All right, cool. And then I will perfect for the next time. That is the 4-step thing that we're doing before and after everything that we do. And here's the reason why that's so important. This is a practice. This is not the final championship game. This is a practice. So if I do make a mistake here, now that I've built up enough self-belief, it's not going to break me. And I will try to make sure I avoid making the same mistake on the next rep, which will be later today. It'll be in a couple hours. Like I get to do this again in a couple hours. Boom, we'll try it again. You're almost never going to start something and be so good at it that you never make a mistake.
No.
If you are, you're not reaching your potential.
No.
Because in order to reach your potential, you have to close the distance on the resistance between where you are today and where you aspire to be. And I don't think you can do that without making mistakes. So failing your way to success ultimately looks like you're making mistakes, but the trend line of the quality of the work you're doing is increasing.
Right.
So this might not be a 10 out of 10 episode for me. This might not be the best I can do. But my 9 today is better than my old 10
Yes.
because I've made so many mistakes. Don't
Okay.
say don't forget this, don't do this, whatever. Look at the camera, don't look over here when you're thinking. All of that stuff, they might be perceived as failures.
Right.
But if you're seeing me now for the first time, you don't see any of those failures. You only see
No.
this version of Kev.
Right.
So yeah, that to me, that's what it means. It means that I know we feel like everything is the championship game, but it's only the championship game if you stop playing. If
Yeah.
you get back after it tomorrow, you have more reps. And when you do a bunch of reps, you remember all the mistakes you made along the way, and you can try your best to avoid those mistakes moving forward. And then eventually you become fairly well-rounded in the craft that you're practicing.
Mhm. But it comes back to the last question. You've got to have the commitment to keep going, and
Right.
that include back to habits. So we're bringing a whole lot of things into play here, right?
Yeah, it all connects.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Who
absolutely.
knew?
We started 4.5, well, nearly 5 years ago. We
Yeah.
started this, and
Mhm.
we started in the business category, and we had some good episodes, and we made lots of mistakes. And as you say, we gradually got better and better, and then we realized that neither of us were experts in any particular business category. So, and we were both very much more interested in health and self-development. So we used all that learning to switch into what we're doing now, and it's
Mhm.
working. It's getting better, but we had to have that commitment to keep going for nearly 5 years or for 4 years.
It's a long time.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. But that's what we do. Now, here's my burning question that I ask all
Uh-oh.
our expert guests, and this is what I hinted at it right at the beginning of the program. So, with all your experience and your personal successes and endeavors, and you're working with Alan and other people, is there one tip, just one simple thing that you could advise our audience to start doing today to help them live a better, a more fulfilling and better balanced life? Is there one thing, or is it too complicated for that?
No, I think you can break it up into one thing. There's many one things. I would say get wildly accurate on your core values, your core beliefs, your core aspirations, and what matters to you as a human being.
Hmm.
Because the only way to really be fulfilled is to make sure you're checking off the right boxes, and you can't do that without awareness. That would be one.
Mhm.
And then the other thing would be instead of focusing purely on results, focus on the inputs that create the results.
Okay.
Results are
Yeah.
just delayed reactions to correct inputs.
Hmm.
And I just wish I understood that earlier. I thought the next interview was going to be the thing, the next guest was going to be the thing. Yeah, they help and it makes things work in a different way, but it's just about doing the right behaviors for long enough. And it seems to me like the more consistent you are, the quote unquote luckier you get.
Right.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, I agree 100%. No, thank you for that. That's very interesting. That's a good one. Thank you
Of
for
course.
that. I'm going to be handing back to Kathleen. She's got an important question to ask you in a moment. So before I go, though, message for our guests. You've seen another brilliant guest today, and make sure you don't miss out on more guests that we have lined up for you. Hop onto our website, theyakkingshow.com, and sign up for our weekly newsletter. And here's a teaser for you. Next week, we'll be having a medical doctor who has developed a whole new idea for increasing the effectiveness of your exercise routine. And that's all I'm going to give you. If you want to find out more, you've got to be here next week to listen and watch. Kevin, from me, thanks so much. I really enjoyed this one. And to our audience, thank you for watching and listening. And back to Kathleen.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today, Kevin. It's
Thank you.
just you've been so insightful and wonderful tips. But before we let you go, please tell us, how do people contact you?
I usually just give away my email because
Yeah.
if you have any questions or anything, I want you to email me. I'm happy to answer questions, comments, concerns. It is Kevin at nextleveluniverse.com. Whether it's any of the stuff we talked about today, podcast questions, business questions, I do my own emails. I want to add value. That is why I started this. I started this to be the type of person that I needed. So anything I can do to add value, please use me as a resource.
Great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Kevin. And
Of
thank you
course.
also very much for tuning in. And if anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, please visit us at theyakkingshow.com. All you need to do is click on the contacts tab where you'll find a short application form, and we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, take care, everyone. Bye bye.